Hey everybody, Shane here, Shoebox Legends. Thanks for joining me for the first episode in what will be a recurring series here on the channel. A new collection that I'm forming that's really giving me a lot of entertainment and a lot of stuff to research and kind of dive in on. And I'm calling this collection my Warlords collection. And as the name would imply, this is going to be a collection of players who led baseball in wins above replacement for any particular season. And the way I'm going to go about this, I want to cover the years 1950 through present, and I want one card from each season that was produced during that season that features the player who led the league in WAR for that year. And I will try to make them as cool or interesting or unique as I'm able to in some way. And at the end of the day, I'll have a really great collection that spans over 75 years and counting of baseball and will be sort of an overview of the history of our hobby, going all the way back to the early 1950s. The only caveat that I'll use here, I did use Fangraphs WAR calculation. I know there are two major players, Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. Down the line, I may add on some Baseball Reference WAR leaders where they differ. But for now, for this initial forming of the collection, I'm using the Fangraphs WAR calculation. And yeah, that's pretty much a wrap. So self-explanatory. What's fun about this? I know WAR is not a perfect statistic, and there are those that take issue with it, but I like that it makes an attempt to generalize statistics across eras of baseball and across positions. So it's like the best stat that I know of where I can determine, or link a player from 50 years ago to a player from 5 years ago, and also kind of link pitchers in alongside the offensive players. So some of these years, it will be an offensive player who took the title. Other years, it'll be pitchers. Many of the years, it'll be Hall of Fame greats, not surprisingly. But there are also some sneaky surprises mixed in throughout the list that I don't think you would expect. So the way we're going to do this, I love that this collection bridges both modern and vintage. So in each one of these videos, I'm just going to pick like 3 or 4 seasons at random and cover the cards that are in the collection from that season. And we're going to start with 1993, your leader in WAR, Barry Bonds, Evil Barry. And I went with this buyback card of his 1993 Topps issue. Because again, where I can, I'm trying to make these unique or special in some way. And I feel like the buyback element kind of elevates this beyond just a traditional 1993 Topps card. I love the image here of Barry doing exactly what he's known for and exactly what he did in 1993, which was just mash the ball. His season was insane in 93. He was closing out kind of the first of 2 crazy runs of domination that he would have, and MVP runs in 1993. So this was kind of his, pardon me saying it, kind of his pre-steroid or pre-enhancement run of MVPs. 1993 was his 3rd MVP in 4 years, having won it in 1990 and 1992 as well. So really, really awesome. He led the league in all of the following categories in 93. Home runs with 46, RBI with 123, slugging percentage, on-base percentage, obviously OPS, which is a combination of those two, but also intentional walks and total bases. So just insane season. So much so that he finished 2 full points plus above the next closest player. So he had a 10.5 wins above replacement in 93. Next best player was Ken Griffey Jr. at 8.4. So Bonds just completely dominating. And this will be a living, breathing collection. So in the same way that I'll add years to it as the sport moves forward, I can also add or replace cards in the collection if I find better ones. So for now, this 1993 Topps buyback is my entrant for 1993 to represent Barry Bonds. But in the future, if I find one that I think is a better fit, I can always bump that one out and improve the collection. Let's jump all the way forward now to the very recent past. We're going to cover 2019. And this is one of those players that you may not have expected to see on the list, finishing with an 8.3 wins above replacement, Alex Bregman of the Houston Astros. Check this card out, just gorgeous. He just edged out Cody Bellinger, who had a 7.9, and Mike Trout, who had a 7.8. but Bregman finished with an 8.3. He had 41 home runs, 112 RBI. He had an OPS over 1.0. All of those are career highs for him. So it does seem increasingly likely that 2019 will go down as his career season, the best of his career. It was his second and final to date All-Star appearance in 2019 as well. And chose this particular card because I love Independence Day as a parallel in general. But I think especially this 2019 version that is really all red stars just is so appropriate for a Houston Astros card. You know, a team that predominantly displays stars right in their logo and is obviously, related to space travel and stars and all of that. I really think it just comes together nicely. The patriotic colors of this. This was the Bregman. When I looked at, available 2019 Alex Bregman cards, this was the one that I wanted to go with to kind of represent him in this collection. These are numbered to 76 every year. Got copy 5 of 76. Now this just needs to be a unique collection to me, but that does not translate to expensive with a couple of exceptions. So I think those first two that we looked at there for 1993 and 2019, each of those was under the $20 price point. So just having a lot of fun putting these together and kind of doing the research. And then once I determine who the war leader was for any season, it's fun to kind of see what cards are out there, what got released, and try to find one that's a good fit. Next up, this one is really special. We're going to go back to vintage now to close out the episode because I want to get some modern and some vintage in here. And this is the first card that was supplied to this collection by a hobby friend. So I've actually been working on this behind the scenes for a few months, and some of my hobby buddies that I text with, I've shared with them kind of my master list of who the Fangraphs war leader was season by season. Because if I put in the time to build a list, I want to share the knowledge with everybody else. So one of the people that I shared it with was my good buddy and yours, Dylan, over at Double D Vintage Baseball Cards. And recently, Dylan and I did a blind trade. We kept it off YouTube, at least not doing a formal video or anything, just to keep the pressure down and enjoy it more. And one of the cards that he sent in his side of the blind trade was for this collection. So check this out. Representing the year 1977, your wins above replacement leader was Michael Jack Schmidt. And Dylan, knowing that and knowing that I was building this collection, he sent me a Double D graded 1977 Topps Mike Schmidt. I mean, when I found this in Dylan's package, my jaw dropped because obviously, due to this collection, I'd been looking for this exact card. And, when you get into the modern era, there's a lot more options that you can go after. But for the 50s, 60s, 70s, I'm largely looking at the Topps issue. There's Bowman and Kellogg's and other oddballs and things like that. But this is the one I wanted for 1977. And getting this Double D graded copy is just incredible. And Dylan even noted on the slab, as he often does, that the 9.2 WAR that Mike had in 1977 was the highest in all of baseball. So very fitting to have this in the collection with the WAR notation right on the flip. And Dylan even included his stats for the 77 season. How great is this? 274 average. He hit 38 home runs, but drove in over 100 and included 11 triples in that tally as well. So this is just killer. He actually had 15 steals in 1977 also, which made those numbers even better, and scored 114 runs in addition to everything else that Dylan noted here. And what's interesting, this is what I love about WAR. I would not have guessed that Mike Schmidt would be the WAR leader for 1977. All those categories that I just mentioned, he didn't lead the league in a single statistical category, but he did everything well. So this is, an example of how WAR gets us to look at big seasons differently than we might have in the past when all we cared about was, home runs and RBI. And he finished 10th in the National League MVP voting in 1977. So there were 9 guys that finished above Mike Schmidt, even though he had the best wins above replacement of any player in baseball. And that's probably because he, only had 38 home runs and just barely drove in 100 runs. But when you look at his collective performance, he did it all, from triples to steals to power, decent average. Just really did it all. And so finished, despite finishing 10th in the National League MVP voting, to me, he had one of the best seasons in the league. And I think, if MVP voting was done back then the way it is now, where some of these advanced statistics are taken into consideration, he obviously would have finished much, much higher than 10th, and maybe he would have even won it. And I think that's one of the fascinating things that this collection does. Gives me a different perspective on some of these seasons of yesteryear. So Mike Schmidt, and with a huge thank you to my good buddy Dylan at Double D Vintage Baseball Cards. This is our 1977 card for the Warlords collection. And then going back even further, we're going to close it out today with 1965, a year in which the player who probably has the most war-leading seasons of anyone on this list captured it, and it was Willie Mays. And for this collection specifically, I picked up this beautiful 1965 Topps Mays. This is a PSA 2, but man, tell me that does not look a whole lot better than a 2. This is a card that I've always wanted but never prioritized until I started this collection. And it was the perfect reason to go out and score one of these. Because of the low assigned grade, I was able to get this for right around $100, which I think is just incredible for a playing era Mays that looks this great and is from a season this significant. Willie in 1965 registered a 10.7 Fangraphs for, just edging out Sandy Koufax on the other side of the ball, who registered a 10.5. And aside from those two, nobody else was even close. So down the line, maybe I'll get a 65 Koufax to put alongside this Mays. But for now, the immediate goal of this collection is just one card of the leader only. So had to get this Mays. Of course, this is represents just his second MVP. He should have won many more. But again, echoing what I said with Mike Schmidt, back in this era, they tended to give the MVP to the best player or the leader on the winning team. And the team's overall performance was taken into consideration much more than the individual. Whereas today, the focus is more on the individual statistics when it comes to MVP. And so because of that, he only won 2. He won one all the way back in 1954. Then after an 11-year gap, won his second and final MVP in 1965. He led the league with a career best 52 home runs that year. Also paced the league in on-base slugging, OPS plus, and total bases. And he is someone, as I referred to, that will be appearing many more times in this project. Certainly 1965, far from the only time that Willie Mays paced the league in wins above replacement. But for today's video, that's going to be a wrap. I'll take a quick look at the back here. Just a gorgeous card. If I could find all 1965 Topps issues in PSA 2 that looked like this, I'd probably collect many more of them. But that's going to be a wrap. Just those 4 cards for today. We touched on the 60s, 70s, 90s, and the 2010s. And I think these 4 cards together are a great example of how this collection is going to be a visual representation of the history of our hobby. So with much thanks to Dylan for supplying the Mike Schmidt to kick off the collection here. Those are the first 4 cards in the Warlords project. With 75 years to cover, I will certainly be back with more of these videos soon. But in the meantime, hope you all enjoy the hobby. Take care, everybody.